Hello everyone, welcome to Movie Talk. Today I'm going to be talking about everything that I've watched this month, October edition. I know it's the spooky season, but I haven't watched really a lot of horror movies, and this month was a bit hard for me to watch movies. I was really busy, so I didn't watch everything that I wanted to. There were a lot of days that I didn't watch anything, so let's start with it. I started the month with Crazy Stupid Love. This was a recommendation of a friend of mine that said this movie was amazing, one of the best movies of his life. And I'm really not a fan of romantic comedies. I usually don't like. I have watched a few romantic comedies, like five or six, and I didn't like any of them. But this one was special because it was actually a solid, decent, good movie. And I wasn't expecting a lot, even though my friend was saying that this movie was absolutely amazing. I didn't buy it, so I wasn't with a lot of expectation, and I had a really fun time. Now looking at my grade, I gave it a 9 out of 10, and I think if I rewatch this movie, I will not give a 9 out of 10. But in the moment, the experience was really nice. The movie was really fun. The duo between Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell characters, they're a great duo, and the movie is really fun. Of course, it has a lot of cringe stuff, but at the moment, I just loved the movie. Then I watched The Covenant. Again, if you've watched my video of the movies I watched in September, you know that I'm really missing a lot of 2023 movies, and I wanted to catch up. And this month I didn't watch as many 2023 movies as the last month. This movie was a really great experience. I don't remember going through my cinema that is near my home and seeing this movie, because if I had known this movie was on the cinema, probably I would have watched. But it's a solid watch. It's a great film. When I finished watching, it was a good experience. So I was like, "Oh my god, this is one of the best movies of the year." Then I was thinking a bit, and I was like, maybe not so much, but it's definitely on my top 10 of the year because I really loved a lot of things in the movie. I loved Jake Gyllenhaal as always. He's such a great actor, and the direction of Guy Ritchie is not the greatest thing in the world, of course, but it's not the thing that most stands out in the movie, but it's definitely not bad. Then I watched The Creator. I'm not going to talk much about this movie because I've already did a review. If you want to check it out, please go. Then I watched Fantastic Mr. Fox. I don't really know why. I just went to Disney Plus and I realized that it was there, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I haven't watched a lot of Wes Anderson films, so I gave it a try, and it was a fun movie. There were a lot of good acting. I don't want to say acting, but I don't know how to say this in English. The direction of Wes Anderson is beautiful. The movie is beautiful, and I loved it. It was a lovely watch. Then I watched Passages. This movie was a weird one because I was waiting for this movie to come out sometime now, because I watched Carsten Runquist. I think you know who he is. He said that this was his favorite movie of the year. He gave a 10 out of 10 for this movie. So I was really expecting a lot. I didn't know anything. I didn't even look for a trailer or a synopsis. I just went for it. I just wanted to watch the movie. When I watched, I realized it wasn't for me. These kind of movies aren't for me. I like independent cinema, but not at this level. It's just not a film for me. It's well made. It has good performances. It has good script. It has good everything, but not perfect. Definitely not 10 out of 10 stuff. And it's just not the movie that I want to watch, but it's a solid watch. Then I rewatched The Gladiator. You know, The Gladiator was a movie that I watched millions of times when I was growing up as a kid, but I didn't remember a lot of this movie because I've watched so many years ago and I didn't remember anything. When I rewatched this month, it was an amazing watch. What an amazing film. Ridley Scott as a director he's an amazing director. He always makes great decisions, but maybe not great movies. As we've seen him in the last couple of years, he's made some questionable movies. But when he was at his peak, he was making Alien, he was making Blade Runner, he was making Gladiator, he was making a lot of great stuff. Nowadays, he's not the same as he was, but he's not bad. It's just not at his peak. Then I watched The Adventures of Tintin. I don't really know why I watched this movie, but I wanted to have fun, and I definitely did with this movie. I see a lot of people say that this movie is a bit dull, is not great, and I agree. Like, technically, it's not a great film. It doesn't have a great script. It has a good direction because it's Steven Spielberg, but the movie isn't anything special, but I had fun with it. Then I watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I had heard so much about this movie, and I didn't had watched at least once in my life. So I gave it a try, and oh my god, what an amazing film. I loved watching it. So much fun. You have fun from the first second of the movie till the last one. Actually, not really, because I didn't like that last scene with the police. That outcome was a bit off for me from the movie. It was a bit off, but everything else, every other joke is perfect. It makes I had such a great time watching this movie. For me, it's an easy 10 out of 10, one of the best movies of all time, and I just completely loved it. Then I rewatched Spider-Man No Way Home. Well, I've watched this movie twice in my life, and the first one wasn't at the cinema, nor the second one. The second one was this month. You know, it's this kind of movies that when it came out, I was not as much into movies as I am nowadays. And I never was a big fan of Marvel or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so I didn't bothered watching superhero movies. So you know, it just happens. I wasn't interested in this movie when it came out in 2021. Later, I realized that it was a big deal, and I went to watch, and I had a great time. And I rewatched this month with my girlfriend, and we had a great time. It's a solid watch. Isn't an amazing movie, but of course it has those flaws that everyone knows, everyone talks about Doctor Strange and the things of the multiverse. It's a bit weird sometimes, but it's still a great watch. Then I watched The Favorite. This is a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. He's a weird director. He makes weird movies. I am starting watching his movies because he's going to make Poor Things that I want to watch. Is a movie that I want to watch. It's coming out in December of 2023, and as I've heard some people comment on, it's a great film. So I wanted to catch up with the Yorgos Lanthimos filmography. And this was a movie that was nominated to an Oscar for a lot of stuff. It was Best Picture, it was writing adapted screenplay, writing original screenplay, for performances, acting, direction, and production design, and a lot of stuff. And I didn't find as great as everyone says it is. A lot of people say it's Yorgos Lanthimos' best movie, and maybe it is because I haven't watched all of his movies. But if this is the best, I am starting to worry because it just wasn't a movie for me. I loved the second act of the film. That middle part of the movie is really interesting. I was really invested in the story, but the first act, like the first couple of 20-30 minutes, weren't as interesting, and the outcome of the movie was definitely not as I wanted it to be, so I didn't like it as much as I was hoping I would. You know, it's these movies where I didn't like the ending, so I'm not blaming the movie just for the ending, just wasn't my stuff, but it definitely fell a lot in the ending, for me at least. Then I watched The Lost World, Jurassic Park. I don't really know why I watched this movie. I have heard so much bad stuff about it, and I still went to watch. I don't know why, and it is as awful as people are saying. Well, it's not a completely awful movie. It's not a 1 out of 10, but it's not good. You know, it doesn't bring anyone from the last movie, just Jeff Goldblum and the old guy that I just forgot his name, and it just introduces to a new crew of people that we really don't care. Okay, and that's probably the biggest issue with the movie, because in the first Jurassic Park, the movie of my life, 10 out of 10, the best movie of all time for me, the thing that we most wanna see is our protagonists not dying. We just want them to survive, and we really care about the characters. In this movie, we don't care about anyone. It's not a fun story, it's not a fun adventure like the first movie is. Like, we are seeing the animals, we are seeing the dinosaurs for the first time, and we have an adventure of not just surviving but going through the wild forests and surviving with the dinosaurs. It's such a magical film, and this movie, it's just not capturing the fun and magical stuff that the first movie had. Also, they use a lot of CGI, and that's awful because 1993 was the first movie. They didn't use CGI because, well, they actually used, but they used for a few times. This movie, it's just 4 years later, 1997. They thought they were in the peak of CGI, and they clearly aren't. It just gets me out of the movie when those dinosaurs of CGI come to the screen, because it's just so perceptible. It's not real that it completely ruins the movie. Then I watched Choose Love. Well, if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you understand that sometimes you just can't have what you want. I didn't want to watch this movie, my girlfriend wanted, so we went to give a go. She loved it, I didn't. It's that kind of movie that it has something new to introduce us to the public, like that thing where you choose the decisions of the character, and there's a lot of endings that you can explore, but it's just not interesting for me. It's just that it's not a movie for me. People who like rom-coms probably will like. I don't. Then I watched Saw. Well, I never watched this franchise. I'm not talking about the franchise. I'm just talking about the first movie. I never watched this franchise because I hear so much bad stuff about it. It's just torture porn and things like that. But then I heard a YouTuber actually saying that this was an awful franchise, but the first movie was actually good because it's more about the investigation and more about the characters than the traps itself. So I gave it a watch, I gave it a go, and he was right. This movie is not just about the traps, although it has memorable traps like the thing with the reversed bear trap. It's not just about the traps, it's about the characters, especially Dr. Lawrence Gordon. I found it a really great film. I loved watching. It was that plot twist at the ending. It was a really great film. The only thing that I didn't like was that crazy stuff, crazy editing, crazy direction stuff from James Wan. But the movie was fun. Well, fun, you can't say really fun, but you understood me. Then I rewatched Zootopia. Why? Again, my girlfriend. But, I can't say that I didn't like this decision, because Zootopia is a movie that I've watched millions of times because of my sister also, and it's a great film. It's those kind of movies where people innovate in stuff, and that innovation actually comes to be a good thing. It's a great idea, it has a good story, it has good direction. I like this movie really a lot. Then I rewatched Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I wanted to rewatch all of Harry Potter's movies, and I still am going to, because I haven't watched Harry Potter a long time now. When I say long time, like 2 years. But when I was a Potterhead, I used to watch these every single days. I would watch every single movie in 1 week, so I'm not as invested as I was. But this is such a great film to initiate this franchise. I think that this movie couldn't have been made better. Maybe the visual effects are a bit outdated. A bit is to sympathize with the movie. There are some visual effects are really outdated, but they don't get me out of the movie. Then I watched Killers of the Flower Moon. Already made a video about it. I made a review, so if you want to know my thoughts, go check it out. Then I rewatched Uncharted. This is a movie that had a lot of things to work with, and had a really great chance to be good. It had a chance to deliver us a interesting story, a fun adventure, like the games. Uncharted 3 is one of the games of my life. I have played that game so much in my childhood, and I wasn't waiting to for this movie to be accurate to any story of the Uncharted games, but at least have something. Like, this movie has nothing. It only has the name of the characters, and it has a story that It doesn't make sense. It's not really interesting. It's not fun to watch. It's just the charisma of Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg that this movie has. And to be honest, I'm not a fan of Tom Holland, so not for me. It has weird CGI. It has action scenes. It has weird physics, that's what I'm gonna call it. Then I rewatched Elemental. This is the kind of movie that it just happens, you know. Pixar spent $200 million on making Elemental. When you finish watching this movie and you see that this movie costed $200 million, you're like, could have given that money to me. This movie has literally nothing to spend the budget otherwise than quality in the animation. Like, the animation is beautiful, but I don't think 200 million were needed to be this good. Well, it's a movie for kids, so obviously it's going to be a bit dull. But it's a romance, basically. This movie is a romance between two characters, and I like the idea of the world of elements: fire, water, earth, and air. But there are just things that don't make sense. They establish some rules, like, yes, water can't live with fire for obvious reasons, but then they just get together and sometimes nothing happens, which doesn't make any sense. And it's just a movie that had little to offer, and it offered little. Then I watched Halloween. You might be looking at the rating that I gave to Halloween, and you are like, what the hell are you doing? And I will explain. I haven't watched a lot of slasher movies, but the ones I did, I didn't become a big fan. I've watched A Nightmare on Elm Street that I completely love. I've watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I've watched Friday the 13th. Those were movies and I watched Scream, of course. Those were movies that I didn't really care. Besides Scream and The Nightmare on Elm Street, the other two are more of a slasher itself, and I didn't become a fan. And I hadn't watched the classic that is Halloween, so I gave it a go, and it's nothing special for me. A lot of people say this movie is a 10 out of 10, and I completely disagree. I don't think this movie is any close as a perfect movie. I think it has its moments, yes, definitely, but then it has some really difficult character choices. Well, when I say difficult, it's difficult to believe, and there are some characters that the audience doesn't sympathize. I don't sympathize, at least. And yeah, that's it. Then I watched Totally Killer. This was the slasher movie of 2023. Well, we already had the Scream 6, but this was more of a slasher itself, because Scream, even being a slasher, it's that franchise of Scream that we know has a lot of jokes and things like this. But this movie was completely slasher, and it brought to the slasher movies something that no one had ever seen before, that was time travel. I mean, it's a cool idea, but the movie itself isn't anything special. There are some visual effects that they do that I don't know why they do, because they clearly don't have the budget for it. So the story is not that interesting. The main character is a bit boring. I don't really like the protagonist, but there is some cool stuff in the movie, and the plot twists that happen throughout all the movie, they either don't make sense or you just don't care about it. And I finished the month with 1922. Well, I was searching through Netflix for a horror movie to watch, and I found this one. It was saying there that it was from a Stephen King novel, and I like Stephen King, and I was expecting something more of this movie. It says that it's a horror movie, but it's clearly more of a drama and a thriller than horror itself. It has a few moments of horror, and those moments aren't anything special. I remember there's a cool sequence, a cool scene that well, it is a bit of horror, but nothing extraordinary. The movie is nothing special, as I said. There is some cool acting, I believe. The script is nothing special, like the story itself. I haven't read the novel, of course, but the story didn't seem particularly interesting. Well, interesting it was, but nothing special. The directing is a bit amateur. I don't know the director, so this is a clearly raw critic that I'm giving. It looks amateur, but there are some cool scenes that the director can make. And this was the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Go watch these movies and form your own opinion. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.